So we'll do that. For the purpose of the recording, we've done roll call and gone over the first three slides, which will be made in public record. And I'll make sure we have good notes for this. So those questions are for those of you that don't have a screen right now, two of the three questions, and feel free if you're here participating as an agency partner or a member of the public to feel free to put this in the chat as well. But what was the moment where you found meaning in this work? And when I say this work, it could be substance use related. It could be the specific thing that you're doing today, sitting in this chair, talking on your computer right now. What motivates you in moments of disappointment? I'm gonna say I was very happy that I had asked myself this question earlier last week because it was helpful this morning a little bit. Where's your dream vacation? See, these aren't all that deep. What was the coolest pairs of shoes you've ever owned? That's in quotes. How can people invite you in to be engaged with the committee when needed? And I'm going to kind of argue that these last two questions might be some of the more important ones in terms of a teamwork thing. So just throwing that out there. And then also, how can people encourage you to step back when that's needed too? I think that both of these things are going to be probably pretty needed as we start to talk about the hard parts and the easy parts of this work moving ahead. So yeah. That said, I'm gonna grab these questions and I will place them in the chat so I can take off um, the slides and we can all just see each other. Katie, I see her and I am letting you in right now. Okay, let me stop sharing really quick. Does anybody feel inspired to go first while I try to copy the questions? Oh, apparently our admin restrictions don't allow me to copy and paste. So I have lied. I will now put these back on the screen.
Hey Doug, this is Art Zamudio. I'll go first.
Thanks.
Hey, uh, so for me, it was 2005. I had graduated treatment, and they offered me a job, and I started working at the same treatment center I had went through. And a dad was graduating, getting his kids back, and had told me that my story had impacted him and supported him in graduating. And I was support staff at the moment. And that's when I was like, I can actually make all this bad stuff I went through is something to help others with that are like me. Um, so yeah, that's the moment where I found meaning in this work. What motivates me in these moments of disappointment are those moments of success of the people that are getting their children back, that are no longer being incarcerated, that are living lives of their fullest dreams. Because I know there's days where there's more losses than wins, but man, when there's those wins, it's life changing and it's great to be a part of that.
Thanks, Art.
I could go. Um, Hi, I'm Moxie. I'm an addiction medicine physician in Eugene, Oregon. I do all kinds of SUD treatment in a CCBHC with psychiatry and primary care. Um, I would say what motivates me when I'm disappointed is that there are a lot of barriers that I face with my patients, and it keeps me motivated to be able to tell them that I'm working on it with the system level solutions when there are things that fall uh, outside of my scope really, but are crucial to the outcome of my patient, like trying to get them into inpatient or trying to make sure their recovery housing is safe and following regulations and not evicting people who are doing the right thing and keeping them safe. So I would say like it keeps me motivated to be able to tell them that I'm trying to help and that there's a bunch of people on their side. So that's been really wonderful. Um, I'd say my dream vacation would be to go somewhere where I can um, go on a long bike ride and swim every day, probably Spain or France. And then Coolest shoes would be red and pink Fluvog high heel shoes. I still have them. I don't go out very much though. So if you want to reach me, you can send me an email. So that was my fourth item. Feel free, or text. Thanks.
Thanks, Moxie.
I'll go next,
Hey, thanks.
if that's okay. When I started as the assignment of being a treatment court judge, I was fairly reluctant because I was a public defender for 14 years before I became a judge. And it just seemed like going back to the stuff I had been doing as a public defender, but as in the role of a judge. And lo and behold, it was, but it was ended up being the most rewarding thing I've done in my career. And I think the moment that I really realized that was going to be the case was when after we went back to in person, because it was just a struggle. I started when we were during the pandemic shutdown, but when we went back to in person court and I did my first graduation and I got to tell people who had completed the program successfully that their probations were being terminated and that they were no longer needing to report to the court or a probation officer or anything. Their lives were their own. So that was amazing. And my dream vacation is the Seychelles Islands.
Where
Is that
are the
enough?
Seychelles Islands? I'm just curious.
Off of the coast of Africa. I think it's off the coast of South Africa. And they're a wildlife reserve. And they're supposed to be amazing.
Thanks. Also, if a silence is too long, I'll hop in and do mine, but you only get that give me one time though, just be aware.
I can go next. Dream vacation, Patagonia. I want to do the W hike that's like 7 days long. I have to do it quickly because I feel like my joints may not make it if I wait until I'm 65 or 70. So hopefully in the next few years I can do that. Things that motivate me in moments of disappointment. So I do a lot of education, and it's always motivating to see sort of like next generation of providers coming through, and they always seem to be so empathetic and impassioned and like such intense advocates for patients. Specifically in addiction medicine, where we've recruited some like just amazing people and providers. And so sort of recognizing that I think, if that's what medicine is going to become, or if that's what this field is going to become, and then I think we'll be in good shape. So yeah. And the craziest or most coolest pair of shoes, I have a pair of cowboy boots that I absolutely love. And when I lived in more rural parts of the state, I used to do like 2-step and 10-step line dancing. So
See, this is exactly why we do these exercises. This is that exact moment right there. No.
I can jump in and go next. My name is Lisa Wiggum. I'm a program manager for Community Counseling Solutions, which is a CMHP in Eastern Oregon. Came in a little late, so I think I know what these questions are, but I could take us down a weird rabbit hole, so my bad. Dream vacay, really any place but here. That's how I'm feeling right now. So I'm happy to go anywhere but the United States of America. Things that motivate me during times of disappointment. I actually get really motivated by disappointment. So if things don't shake out the way that I need it to, or that I want it to, or hope it does, that's a really big motivator for me to kind of dig in. And that's where that resiliency comes in, and kind of that grit around the work that we do when it comes to supporting vulnerable populations and communities. Not everybody gets it, and especially if they've never had to walk a day in the life of oftentimes the populations that we work with or serve, right? If you don't see it, you don't know it. So it's really casual to you, perhaps. But yeah, disappointment is a huge motivator for me, just in general. I'm highly competitive. And then shoes. This is going to be controversial, but I prefer no shoes. So the best pair of shoes I've ever owned are no shoes. And I just like my bare feet to be on the bare earth. at all times if possible.
I can go next. And I apologize, I have to be off camera just because my network here is absolutely terrible. But the moment I found meaning in this work was when I was with Multnomah County in the jail, and I did a tour at the, probably 10 years ago now, with the then Deputy Commissioner of Portland Police, Jamie. What was her last name? She was fantastic. She, even though we were in the same building, had never been into our intake area. And she was flabbergasted at the level of craziness that our staff had to work through. And that was compounded by police officers screaming in nurses' faces for not taking patients who had no business being in a jail without being stabilized first. And it provided a huge breakthrough in the relationships between jail staff and the Portland police staff, and consequently, it led to direct better patient outcomes for people that were detoxing, that swallowed huge baggies right upon arrest, and now we're not at risk of dying within our walls, So there was, it was incredible. It was incredible, and after that, for me, there's a motivation of I can partner with all the people, So then we started working with Clackamas County and Washington County and creating crosswalks. What are you doing? What are we doing? And, us kind of utilizing each other's knowledge and practices to have it uniform across the board so people didn't have different experiences no matter where they went because we were seeing the same people. I could go on and on and on and on, but the partnerships, I think, is really what I found motivating, because then we could really make a realistic impact, especially in that population of individual. And that people started listening to us. The jails, people didn't listen much in jail healthcare, but once we had courts, judges asking us questions, we had attorneys asking us questions, it really did change how we approach the care. What motivates me in moments of disappointment? I grew up in the slums in Kenya, one of the biggest slums in Africa. It can never get that bad. I've been through so many things. And so for me, I'm always thinking, it cannot get as bad as anything I've been through. And I just put my head down and move on. I'm in the land of milk and honey, as bad as it may feel right now. It is nowhere close to what I grew up with, where people would be snatched up if you talked about somebody in a way that you shouldn't talk about. Watching, Rwanda fall apart and South Africa fall apart when I was growing up, all those things, it can never get as bad as, a million people losing their lives in the most brutal way. So I'm very determined and very competitive like Lisa. Dream vacation, Japan. I really want to go to Japan. My first language is an indigenous language in Kenya that sounds exactly like Japanese. It's absolutely bizarre. I have learned a lot of Japanese over the last 20 years just by watching shows because it sounds just like my language. I don't even know how that works. Coolest pair of shoes I ever owned. My cousin who'd come to America like many, many years before I ever did, came back to Kenya and left me the coolest pairs of and ones that were blue and white. And I walked with, it didn't even matter what clothes I had on, people didn't care. They just looked at my feet and they were like, you are the man. And I felt like the man. It was awesome. How can I invite people to engage with me? I'm a people person. I encourage people to, who can come into face to face to meet with me. I know next week, in a couple of weeks, we have a big meeting. I'm super excited to see people, in person. If you ever want to have a coffee or whatever, let me know. And always take care of yourselves. I think in my time in Multnomah County, I didn't realize how much I was giving of myself without putting anything back in. So I always tell people, yeah, go ahead and step back and take care of yourself. I'm so happy to be here with you all.
Thanks, Mike.
I can jump in. I'm Amy Nordstrom. I'm the behavioral health supervisor for a small behavioral health team at just kind of juvenile department. I think my moment when I found meaning in this work, I started off my professional career in the land of wilderness therapy and adventure-based therapy. And probably the moment that I found meaning was out in the wilderness somewhere with uh, an angry adolescent that was emotional and looking up at the mountains and just finding I don't know, just really connecting with uh, teenagers specifically and angry teenagers for some reason. Um, yeah, and then I became a therapist and now I'm in this position. What motivates me? I think my 9-year-old son would is what motivates me the most when I'm feeling disappointed. Um, Dream vacation. I want to travel the world, so pretty much anywhere um, outside of the US. Coolest pair of shoes. I have a bit of shoe shopping trauma because I have a size 12 foot, so it's difficult to find cool shoes that fit my feet that I like. So I can't really say that I have a cool pair of shoes. Um, how can people invite me in? I am really more so I like to talk to people individually. Public speaking or speaking in front of groups is not my thing. So phone calls, messages, in person, individual kind of stuff. I prefer. Um, and stepping back, I don't know that I'm ever an oversharer or stepping in too much, but probably, yeah, I'll have to think about that one.
Thanks, Amy.
Hello, everyone. I'm happy to go next. My name is Joe Bezeghi, and I am an independent business development consultant with experience in the treatment sector, also a SUD peer myself. And I first found meaning in this work. The first time that I found a meaningful peer-based relationship in myself before entering the field, while experiencing, addiction, substance use disorder, and realizing that there was this missing component to so many treatment paradigms that was the person of lived experience that could act as a support, a guide, and in certain ways a mentor or facilitator. And it became of interest to me to see how I could help to integrate that function, and see it actually act as an integral function as we continue to crack this nut that is weaving medicine and behavioral health together. In that moment, I'd say I saw the role of the peer as facilitator of exactly that connection, and have had the opportunity to see how the possibility of lived experience within systems of treatment really can increase efficacy and outcomes, better outcomes, lead to better outcomes. So I remember that moment very well. I always will. And let's see, what motivates me? In moments of disappointment, I hearken back to an ancient Persian saying, "This too shall pass." On knowing that everything is pure ephemera, and I try to tap into that in the moments of pure joy as well, for what that's worth. And let's see, how can people invite me in, and how can people invite me to step back? I welcome direct connection. Any way that someone wants to get a hold of me is perfectly wonderful, but the DM function I think we usually have here on Zoom is great if we're in the moment, or feel free to email me, reach out in any way. As was mentioned earlier, I'm always happy to make IRL connections over coffee or any other way as well. So please reach out, and I'm happy to connect and also happy to be amongst this group. Thanks everybody for being here.
Thanks, Jeff.
I'll go. Hi, I'm Allison Weiss. I'm the executive director of Kodak. We're predominantly in the Portland metro area and a little bit on the North Coast, if you don't know us. I don't want to sound flippant, but I honestly, I cannot find a moment or place a moment. I have had, I've worked in this community for 26 years now and had just like so many incredible opportunities in patient care, in mentoring young clinicians, in developing leaders and developing as a leader, building programs. I mean, just and now being able to have a voice in a policy and legislative advocacy. I mean, it's just sort of incredible what I have been able to do, and I couldn't. I just keep welcoming it. So anyway, so I don't have a moment. And it's partly, I think, how my brain is wired, and that sort of speaks to what motivates me in disappointment. I think a big part of why I have thrived in this work is that I am just sort of built to be very sort of anchored in the belief in the ripple effect. I have, I believe just very deeply that the way I carry myself, the way I exist in the world, has an impact on everything around me. And as long as I approach that thoughtfully and with good intent, then I do good. And so when all of this nonsense is happening, I know that regardless of what's happening around me that may cause me great angst, I can still show up and try make the world a better place. So I do that. My dream vacation, anybody that has spent probably more than 10 minutes with me has heard me talk about my love for Spain and my hope to live in Spain someday. So maybe I should think about a dream vacation someplace I haven't been, but I am just so deeply enamored with it there. And I was in Spain in September, and it was, of all the great vacations I've had, it was the one that was everything I wanted it to be. And to Moxie's point, I was bobbing around in the ocean every day, and I really think that it like did something magical for my soul. So that's my good vacation. It's funny, the coolest pair of shoes question is a tough one. I have a lot of shoes and I love shoes. I've loved a lot of shoes in my lifetime. For whatever reason, the first one that came to me is this pair of sort of maroonish red boots that I bought probably 26 years ago. I was new in Portland. I was young. There was this really cool shoe store downtown called Johnny Soul. And the fact that I had accumulated enough money that I could buy those boots, I felt like hot shit. And I still have those boots. And they are still some of my favorites. So, yeah. I wish I had a better answer for the next two, the invite in and the step back. I think forgive me, if that's really sort of meant to be the, like, if I'm oversharing in this meeting, how can somebody say, Allison, take it down a notch, or if maybe I need to be asked that. So I guess the answer is, I can talk a fair amount, and then I can get in my head about it. So I'm actually really pretty open and respond really positively to people just like saying my name and giving me feedback. I think Katie does a really nice job of like complimenting me, and it just does something to my brain and my heart. So just be direct and kind.
Thanks, Allison.
I can go. Okay, moments. I'm kind of like Allison. I have a lot of moments because I've worked in really three distinct areas in this field. I've worked as an inpatient counselor, I've worked in harm reduction, and now I'm at MACBO. So, oh, I'm Christy McKinney, sorry. I'm director at MACBO, director of credentialing at MACBO. And yes, it's a new haircut. I'll just jump to the last question. Yeah, I learned the hard way that, yeah, like what you were saying about taking care of yourself. So I got breast cancer and that's the new hairdo. So chemo's done. I'm in remission. Everything's fine. But yeah, it really puts things in perspective for you. So it's really the first time I'm seeing it, like, on camera. So it's kind of fun. But that moment, I think for me, um, when I was a clinician, that moment came the first time that I was an inpatient at Salvation Army, and I was a baby counselor practicum. I mean, I did not know what I was doing, and that is a hardcore place to work. Men transitioning out of prison, it's tough. And one of them asked me at graduation to put their pin on them because their family was out of town. And then I ran into that person like 7 years later. I'm at an Arby's of all things, and they said they recognized my voice. And I looked in this guy who was all clean cut, back then, tattooed from head to toe. I'm thinking, oh no, don't judge people. Is clean for 7 years and owns his own business. And that was like that, everything comes full circle kind of thing. I've had a lot of those moments. Going back into to when I first went into OSCI to give a conversation, going from, being a guest there to, well, not there, but yeah, to being able to go in and share my story and where you come, how far you come. That's really what motivates me, is just I want people to know that there's nothing you can't do, that no matter what your past is, there's nothing you can't overcome. And I want to be that example, because I didn't come from a very good place. So that's what motivates me, and the people we've lost. We do it for them. We can't save everyone, but we can save the next one. And I just keep thinking that. So yeah, and then there was the time that Eric Martin called me. He said I didn't need to want to be Eric Martin when I grew up anymore, that I was Eric Martin. And then he moved to Mississippi and left me here with Oregon. So I guess he thought I was ready. That was my MacBo moment. My coolest shoes. I was a ballet dancer many moons ago, and it was the 80s, and we actually had point shoes somehow figured into Converse tennis shoes, and it was the coolest thing ever. They were bright blue, and they were not easy, but that was the coolest pair of shoes I had. And for my vacation, I want to go wherever that is in Spain, where Moxie and who I forget who said the other one. I'm gonna go there. I want to go to Spain. So that water, that's what I need, is that magical water. Yeah, that's about it.
Thanks, Christy.
We're running out of people. I can go.
Go ahead. I'll say state agency folks definitely jump in too.
Yeah, I'm Brian Goldman. I'm with the Oregon State Police. I'm a lieutenant there. I work in major crimes. Moment for me was an enforcement contact that I had where a gentleman I met named Dana used to be a computer programmer. He had back surgery, got hooked on opioids from that surgery, and progressed from there into heroin. He couldn't afford it, so he started selling on the street. And this was just something that he was not at all, it was not a good world for him. We ended up doing an interdiction on him, getting him into treatment, and getting him cleaned up. He ran to a trooper not that long after my contact with him, maybe a year or two. And he was all cleaned up and back living his best life. So that's something I think about frequently as motivation for my particular work. Dream vacation, Hawaii, shoes, LA gear, lights, not the pumps, from when I was a kid. I'm pretty quiet. If you want to invite me in, just ask me directly. And if you want me to step back, shoot me a message, uh, or just call me out publicly. Either way is good.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, I'll go. I'm Katrin Yount, clinical director at Continuum, formerly known as On Track, in Southern Oregon. The meaning thing, that's kind of a hard one, but I think if I really think about it, I mean, I'm in this field because I believe in leaving things in better condition than how I found them. So kind of on that note, a time when I really found that I was in the right place was really early in my career when I was managing a secure psych res program. I showed up in that role like right as disaster was about to strike, so was ultimately tasked with kind of helping fix a broken program. And so I really started like when I started to hear clients and staff express that they felt safe. I knew I was doing the right thing, I was in the right place, and that I should probably stick with it. So here I am. When I have moments of disappointment, I'm a really task-oriented person. So I think that the way I handle disappointment the best is just grabbing a project to sink my teeth into and focusing on that. It's really important for me to kind of pay attention to what's within my control. And so I just embrace what I can do as opposed to fixating too much on the disappointment. Dream vacation, probably just any alternate universe in which I'm finally not on call for once in my life. Um, but if not that, then at least somewhere that can involve kidnapping a red panda would be preferable. Um, I mean, you don't have to tell anybody. It could be legal, sort of. Um, Shout out to Christy. My coolest shoes are definitely point shoes. I was a ballet dancer for 15 and a half years. And that was kind of like my other life. And never got to do anything as cool as have point shoes that looked like Converse. I mean, it was a big status symbol and a big deal if you got cast in a role that required just an alternative color of point shoes. So, I mean, one time I got to wear red ones in a performance, and that was insane. So we'll go with that. Inviting me to engage, I mean, just be nice and ask. And if you want me to step back, just be nice and ask.
Thanks, Katrine. And I will do my best to, is it Yont? I want to make sure I don't keep butchering that.
Yeah, it's Katrin, and my last name's Yount. Yeah.
Oh my God, I
Yeah, you're
butchered
totally
both.
good. It's a weird
No,
name. I'm
I'm
fine.
terrible. I'll hop in and then I just want to note that it's co-chair Katie is the last remaining committee member. Who's that means you're late again. No. Uh I've been I've started a war now. I've been sort of in this interesting place of not trying to sound too profound like Allison has, but I've just kind of been doing this for a while that like I kept like every time somebody would bring up a different like what motivates you, I was like, ooh, in this one, in this one. And I had this less important thing that I've actually like come to think about more and more and more as I've gotten older, which is I was lead. So there was this fella in one of our treatment programs. This is probably like 12 years ago, who for some reason out the gate hated me. And I like for those of you that know me, like I like to pretend I don't have a mean bone in my body, or I like to pretend I do have a mean bone in my body. And for some reason, no matter what I did, this fella just like interpreted everything I did as a slight, and we could not figure it out, couldn't figure it out. Uh, if you've ever worked on a residential program, like you might have played a few games of Pictionary in your life. And we were playing Pictionary one night, and I'll never forget that he I think his card said nurse on it, and he kept drawing this thing on the board and then poking at it with his pen until the marker thing had just like fallen inside. He was so frustrated, and I thought he was gonna like hit somebody just because of like how all of that played out. And at some point, somebody was like, "Is it you?" And he like flipped out again because he had these like ideas around masculinity. And I'll never forget at his celebration ceremony he was leaving. I had taken a photo of that picture and we framed it for him and like gave it to him. And he was like, I'm gonna go do something to help people because he was like so enamored that we had like kept this thing because this is and he'd been in treatment for like a week. But he ended up like going and becoming a CADC and then becoming a nurse and like going through this track. And it was this very funny thing to just watch somebody soften. And not that I think like we can't be rigid and scary and mean when we need to be, but it was a very interesting thing to see this person just soften over time and decide like he wanted to care for people after being kind of on the other end of that. Um, the one that I'll kind of throw in terms of motivates you and moments of disappointment and when I need to step back, I'm actually going to group these two together, which is it sounds like it might be a challenge for a couple of us, but I like to dive in even deeper when things get not good. And so, in a weird way, when things get disappointing to me, like I might need you to say, "Hey, Mitch, like chill out and step back," though it might help me to not do that. So that's what I'll offer.
So that leaves me, right? Okay. I really was just trying to like stay quiet in a corner and let everybody else go. So oddly enough, Allison, I was gonna have the same answer. Can't name like a single moment, right? And then I was thinking about it, and I feel like there's been several single moments, right? I started off in my career in behavioral health at a medical detox, and I came in thinking, I'm gonna save everybody, right? And that's not how it works, right? And I think I always say that to start off as a clinician, you've got to start at detox, right? Because you get the very worst of folks, and help, and you have the opportunity to change their lives around. And then from there, I found meaning being a clinical supervisor. I really thought that was it for me. I loved helping teach those to be better versions of themselves, to help others be better versions of themselves. Um, and I think lately, having the opportunity to advocate for rural and frontier communities in Eastern Oregon, I applied to be for the ADPC a few years ago, and I'm like, why not, right? I'm just gonna give it a shot. I probably won't get it, and then I got it, and then Annalise listened to me when I'm like, what about Eastern Oregon? What about Eastern Oregon? That felt really good. And then I realized like that crystallized it for me that like I can advocate and people do listen to me and they do care. Um, as far as disappointment, I think uh, this is think I draw motivation from community partners and especially peers who keep showing up even when progress feels stalled. Um, I think peers are probably some of the most amazing humans and they keep showing up. They're the most underpaid and do so much work, but they keep showing up and they love their work and they have so much passion and it's just so motivating. Dream vacation, this may not come to a surprise for some, but anywhere where I can just read books without anybody interrupting me, that would be amazing. It could be at home, right? It could be staycation as long as I can have uninterrupted escapism time. And the coolest pair of shoes I've ever owned, I'm gonna stick with some Chucks, right? Like I'll always buy them. I'm super boring. I think they're so cool though. I'm sure they're cringe somewhere, but I'll die on that hill that Chucks will always be cool. Am I supposed to answer more than that, or am I good?
No, that's all.
Okay.
Are there any agency partners that want to jump in? It is totally optional, but we do have time in this area of the agenda if you'd like. Hey, Rachel.
Hi. I mostly just thought it was really odd if I was the only person off screen that didn't say anything.
You just muted.
I sure did. I originally had told Mitch my plan for today was just to observe, but just wanted you all to know I'm Rachel Mark. I'm a treatment court analyst from the Oregon Judicial Department. Really excited to start kind of attending your meeting. A lot of the work that you're doing benefits and overlaps with treatment courts. I'm just looking for opportunities to learn more about the work you're doing and where we can leverage what's happening on kind of both sides of the branches. So I don't think I'll dive into the whole shebang of the intros, but didn't want to be the weird person off screen. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Rachel. Once, going twice. Again, I invite anybody to share anything inside the or in the chat as well. Um, I also realized there was something I wanted to talk about in the kind of timeline that I briefly went over, and then I think panicked and realized I hadn't been recording their meeting. So it's maybe a good thing I didn't talk about it. So let me just go back to this really quick, and then we'll move forward. So in terms of what's been going on over the last couple of months, so just a kind of a bit of a recap, we placed each of the committees on hiatus back in October, kind of to hopefully encourage some folks to show up to their local road show, but two, just because the first 9 months of the year was a lot on everybody. And then the next 3 months or 2 months gave the team at the ADPC time to kind of get ready for this next year. So something I just want to kind of say is we are still waiting for kind of the final approval on the plan itself in terms of like all of the sequenced events that is being in review right now. However, if you go to our website, there's a brand new treatment page that's incredible, has a bunch of our activities and near-term metrics and all of those things. I'll grab a link to that in just a second. Also, this wonderful page that gives both a executive summary of the plan as well as a kind of I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember, a plain language summary too, which actually I was really impressed with. So shout out to Stephanie for putting all of that stuff together. The hope is we'll continue to use these pages as a way to keep the public aware of what's going on, but also to be able to show the plan. As you might recall, we really set out to not have just this book that would live on a shelf and die on the shelf. It was to be a living plan. And so hopefully this is something you'll see as this website starts to come more and more online and we start to add to it. But within the treatment side itself, you'll notice each section is separated by those kind of hopeful activities, near term, long term, so on and so forth. And yeah. So I want to say we were doing that and then also meeting with a bunch of different agency partners to kind of figure out like when things could actually happen. For those of you that aren't aware, which I would think would be very funny, but just in case, things can take a while to happen in the world when you're changing them at a systems level. And for those of us with less patience, that can be really challenging too. And so we've been spending a lot of time kind of thinking about how this can all come together. And I've been sort of trying to think about how much this reflects what we all hope to do in the last year. So, in doing all of that, I came up with like the best version that I think I can condense into one slide, which is not probably the best way to do this, but I'm going to kind of walk through what I think the first year can map out to. Thematically, what I want to say is there was some really great advice that was given to me by an agency partner sometime in September when we were looking at some of the information that I think you would all hope to not. We're looking at one of the changes that our MOUD work group asked us to do. And one of the phrase that was used at the time was, "This is a piece of information we have not ever looked at. And for us to just say we're going to care about is going to cause a shift in itself because people will care about it suddenly, or they'll know that we're looking at it." And as I started to think about a lot of the things that you all were showing up at each committee meeting and saying, but what about this? But what about this? I started realizing there was a couple pieces to this, which is one, some of our complaints or frustrations as people who want to improve the effectiveness of the substance use treatment portion of our continuum. We've been carrying some of those complaints in our back pocket for maybe a decade or more. And sometimes those complaints maybe are even outdated themselves. So I'll throw out, if I'm being kind to everybody, we might actually not have the most current information. And I think the other nice part about this, though, is just like when we do anything, having all of the information allows us to make sure all of our decisions are based in evidence. And the last piece of all of that is saying what we're going to start looking at, to the point of that really great advice given to me by an agency partner, shows what we're going to say is important moving forward. So all of you have asked for these very actionable, measurable results. However, in order to get there, I think we need to have a lot of information in hand. So this is sort of the list of all that information. Now, what I want to kind of say here is you'll notice each of these are in color. It's probably going to be easier to see on the PDF that was attached to this calendar invite and is uploaded to the website. But each of these kind of colors that each of the text is responds to the kind of priority area. So anything that's orange has something to do with evidence-based or tribal-based practice access. Blue has something to do with improving transitions. Green is a timely access related goal. Purple is related to quality and accountability. A lot of the orange, I'm going to be very honest with you, is my first mark of disappointment I'm going to kind of bring to you today to talk about, which is if you're not aware, there was, this is starting to break in the press, but I've seen two articles today. I think the impacts we're still trying to fill out, but there were a significant portion of SAMHSA grants terminated late last night, which has meant pretty much any federal TA center is now terminated. And we're still not sure all of the impacts. SOAR is seemingly safe, but maybe not SOAR TA. So we're still trying to sort that out. OHA is working on that. There are also some community partners. I'll just say, I know Heather Jeffries isn't here, but I saw Heather Ray of OCBH post today a survey that providers can fill out. So there are community partners collecting information as well. I have a couple communications lights, so we can just try to keep everything together. All that said, one of the big hopes that I had, and you'll see this in this July through September orange line of identify EBP TA priorities. One of the things that we were working on when we were sequencing out all of these goals, I realized, do I have a laser pointer that I could use perhaps? I do. Right here. One of the things that we had mapped out in the fall was a relationship with our federal TA center, the Addiction Technology Transfer Center, that our committee would form a small work group. Then every August we would meet and say, here's going to be the priorities for you next year. And then all of their planning would follow suit. If that team doesn't exist, how that looks is going to be a little bit more shaky and also means the TA could have a cost to it. So I think we might have to kind of talk as a group what that can look like moving forward. So I just want to highlight that right out the gate to say there was a plan for how we were going to approach TA that needs to some restructuring already. But disappointment aside, I would like to kind of walk you through the year of what I'm hoping can happen, knowing that we're in 2026, which we're 14 days into, and who knows what will kind of happen for the rest of the year. However, kudos to all of you though, because you built a plan that is also, I think we said this in like maybe February or March, but like if there's a lifeboat kind of decision making, like maybe we can make those lifeboat decisions. And I think you've built a plan that allows us to kind of be able to think about that. So one thing I want to say also, if something's listed in this quarter, it doesn't mean it's completed in this quarter. It just means it's started. Part of that is because I have a feeling that there's probably going to be some other interruptions to what we need to be doing. And also some of this is just going to take some time and convening other people. So in the spirit of increasing evidence-based and treatment or tribal-based practice access, one of the things that as a treatment committee you all asked, and this is just kind of a little bit of recap. I'm going to try to tie each of these back to something that happened in the committee as best as my memory was able to kind of sort out over the year. But when the 4002 work group provided its recommendations, this committee asked, can we not just stop at MOUD? Can we look at medications for all substances where they're available? And so we do have this MOUD like treasure trove of information. Shout out to a 50-page report some idiot wrote last year named Mitch. And that's available, but we do need to figure out where else, like what else is available throughout the system. So that's something that I'm hoping that we can start to inventory anything else that is out there, whether that's emerging practice, currently accepted, FDA approved, so on and so forth. So I think that's going to be an important first step. And then also understanding those barriers, which means we'll have to, again, go through that cycle of talking with payers, talking with folks throughout state agencies. So it will take time, but it will have that information and then we'll be ready to do something with it. With ASAM, one of the things to throw out is we are in the process of ASAM 4 implementation. It is a requirement that we do this. I have been working with one of the staff or a few of the staff who are involved with that process. I'm trying to remember fully when their full implementation go live time is. However, one of the things that you all have kind of talked, I would say pretty significantly at length about though too, is knowing that there's sort of this like ASAM in principle and ASAM in practice kind of difference. And one of the things that I think has been interesting is what that can mean as we start to recommend policy. The other thing that I think is going to be important with this, and this relates to this purple line here, is required audits, because there's going to be a little bit of more of an overlap for this oversight moving forward. Because now there's this question of like, if you have ASAM accreditation, does that mean now you have this other audit that you'll be doing in turn with that as well? And also understanding, I think, how ASAM is supposed to be reflected in the care that's provided and what we're brought up to. The other thing that you all asked about was wait lists. Something that I think is very interesting that Tim has talked about Tim, our Third Horizons consultant, has talked about is in some other states when they've gone to look at wait lists, what they've found is that wait lists exist in theory, but not in practice. So they'll say like, oh, we have a wait list, but then they'll find there's no referrals going to the place that's like 2 blocks away, for example. And there might be reasons why. Maybe there's like not good partnership. Maybe that other program isn't good. Like there could be reasons, but we don't know what those are. And if tomorrow we just said all providers must start reporting their wait lists, I can't imagine the response to that. And so one of the things that I think we also need to kind of sort out, though, is the risks, benefits, and costs to doing this. And when I say cost, I don't actually mean this financially. I mean to the person and to the people involved in all of this. But also, what are we supposed to do? So what I also want to say with these inventories is this is both at a federal and a state level, just so we can kind of understand, like, there are requirements for waitlists. There's requirements for waitlist management related to specific funding even. So collecting all of that, making sure that we're doing things that are in alignment as much as possible. With the goal of eventually being able to say, okay, now let's do something with wait lists. My hope is that we can start with something like withdrawal management, who has technically less programs and also has a like pretty like a more intensive reason for knowing like up-to-date information for or for wait lists, but we'll get there when we can figure that out. The one thing that I'm really excited to say, I kind of like had previewed this to Judge Rigmaiden at the start of the call before everybody had hopped in here. But occasionally we get to actually like report on cool things that happen. And one of the things that I'm so excited to say is that this committee has already caused change, which is the treatment courts are now screening for MOUD, current MOUD, referrals to MOUD, which means we'll have data on how that looks moving forward. And so like I cannot thank OJD, treatment courts, and Rachel Mark in particular for like making that happen. So like seriously, thank you. That's like a very quick win, and probably we won't get one in like that quick in the future, but like way to go. Yeah, July 27. Okay. So thank you. Yeah, and so my hope is then like maybe this time next year we'll be able to be like, hey, like what did MOUD access look like within treatment courts? And if there's any changes that need to be, we're ready to do that and be able to address that, which is cool. And we have great partners to do that. In April, the hope is then we can start doing a couple other things. So for those of you that aren't aware, there are a couple reports that happen periodically, one of which is a parity report. We don't pay a lot of attention to our parity reports in the state, and I don't mean like the state government does. I mean, a lot of people tend not to. My hope is that as a committee, we'll review any information that's in that report, with part of that reason being that each year when they do that report, there's a special interest area. And one thing we might be able to recommend is like, hey, next year, this could be a special interest area for you to uncover within that. Around this same time, too, our claims analysis. For those of you that aren't aware, we've been working with Comagine to look at a claims analysis, look at all insurance claims dating back to 2020 or 2016. So it'll be 2016 to 2013 because that's when claims data was available. But to figure out utilization, there's a couple of things that we've asked them to try to even figure out. Can we look at care cascades? Are we able to see like which levels of care people are going to, length of stay? So there's a lot of that's in there. I want to say we've received 3 of the 9 deliverables. One of which I will tell you, and this is sort of like a good example of this middle line where I'm talking about monitoring funding changes, agency partner efforts, and emerging needs. And I'm still kind of hoping that this doesn't happen, if our healthcare subsidies do go away, One of the things that we asked that team to do was to figure out how many folks are likely to lose coverage or may make decisions related to their coverage if they lose subsidies by trying to figure out how many individuals received SUD care by way of insurance provided by healthcare.gov. So we have that information as well. So we're just trying to make sure we have like up-to-date decision-making data. And so we'll complete that and then hopefully review this as a team and be able to talk about what if anything, this like helps us plan for the next year, any reflections, so on and so forth. The next thing, and I want to kind of talk too about a lot of these inventories and assessments. When we meet in February, my hope is these are kind of the bunch that we're helping kind of co-design, and then you can give me a bunch of work to go and find a bunch of this information and request it. But similarly, when we get to this landscape assessment, something that you all wanted to see more and more and more of was fidelity to evidence-based practice. There is one auditing process that I know of in the state that is focused on fidelity auditing. If we asked that of licensing certification, I don't think that that's a fair ask in the moment. But it did make me start to think like, who is using what evidence-based practices? Where are they? And then if I'm thinking again, this world where we would have been able to plan for those evidence-based practice priorities, and I'm still hoping that those TA centers are okay. But in that world, we would be able to say like, you know what, everybody's saying they're doing MI. Maybe we just want to make sure that like MI skills are good before we move on to the next thing. Or maybe everybody's saying that they're doing CV, whatever it might be. I would love help with working with all of you to figure out how do we start to solicit that information or elicit that information from our provider base? Because another survey, it might be too much, another email, whatever it might be, but figuring out specifically what those practices are. Is it reviewing websites? Is it one-on-one conversations? Let's co-design that together. Also during the second quarter, I would love to talk about how we might start to form these work groups. One idea we had for this MOUD work group was rather than it become something that looks, or MSUD, I should say, but this medications related work group, rather than it look like the work group that was in like charge of the 4002 report, Annalise had this really awesome idea of could this be a learning collaborative? So it's both the learning space and the policy space. And that way we can have a much faster kind of direct result. Is this something that we involve our payer partners in also so that they're simultaneously knowing what we're building towards so they can be ready for it? So there's a lot of possibilities there. The next inventory to start thinking about is discharge standards. So what are those things that we're saying people must get, and that both federal, state level, so on and so forth, to understand where we are or aren't regulating towards, where things need to be changed. At the same time, there is I think it was the Federal Consolidation Appropriations Act of 2023. I want to say that if I have the year wrong, I apologize, but I'll make sure I get that. There was a benefit that was created underneath that Appropriations Act that gives individuals leaving justice-involved or carceral-based settings who are 18 and under, or if they're in kind of OIA world, under 25 or 25 and under, so if they're leaving DOC. In any case, anybody leaving those settings gets access to targeted case management. Their insurance is turned on, I believe, 30 days before release, so they can start to do more rapid access to their community-based services. That should be entering a pilot phase at this point in time. And this is something that, one, we do have to implement, but two, could have really big impacts on the population coming out of OIA and detention centers. And so this could be really great for your justice involved settings goals that we had as well. So I'm hoping that we'll have somebody from the team come report on that. This is in July. My hope is over the summer we can start to look at withdrawal management, as I had mentioned. We can start surveying like, hey, how are you managing your wait list? Is it that people are doing the thing where they come to your building every morning and that's the way they get in? Like, so we can start to dial that down. I don't think that tomorrow, again, in the year of 2026, we'll have this money to just suddenly open like a bajillion withdrawal management programs. But you all wanted to see withdrawal management be available same day. And so that means figuring out how can that be possible. If it's through transportation improvements, is that because do we need to make sure that wait lists change to allow for transportation to happen still? So there's a lot of mechanics for us to figure out there. This is where we would meet to kind of figure out our TA priorities for the next year. I'm going to just kind of say, we'll talk about that later as we know more about what's going on with the SAMHSA funds, but I have some ideas for how we might restructure that. Some of which are just me, which is not the smartest choice because again, that's my method, right? Then also inventorying our quality and incentive metrics. One of the areas that I do think hasn't existed historically, or we haven't done historically as the ADPC, is tried to influence those measures and incentives. And I don't mean to say that we have by statute an ability to do that, but I do think we have, as a group of individuals, the structure, the expertise, and the ability to, as a group, write a letter to metrics and scoring, say, hey, here's what we find important over the next year, or here's how you could align these metrics with our priorities. And that is, again, I'm kind of like in my head, kind of future thinking though, is if we end up in this place of maybe those dollars start to decrease, like that priority becomes more important too. And it's not to say that there's a promise that we will affect that change, but I do think that it is a moment where we could ask to affect that change. One of the other things that, if you're not aware, by statute, we are required, I believe, every other year, every other July, to report on our progress as the ADPC. I think it's just a great opportunity for us as a committee to just review our progress every July anyway. And so I've just kind of listed that in here to just say, like, what have we already collected? Where are we off? And then really for you to hold me accountable as your staff member to say, like, Mitch, what have you been doing with your time? Please show us your work. And I mean that, like, genuinely. October through December. This is where, again, we're going to ignore that one. Roads should be at full implementation within September, I believe. One of the hopes that we have kind of been working on with the roads teams is to be able to issue reporting back to organizations and counties. This was something that I believe in road shows came up quite a bit, but also as we started to talk about in our breakout rooms is like, we're providing all this data to the state, or like, this is what our providers saying, like, what do we get from it? And so in talking with roads, like there is a couple issues that I think everybody has to be aware of, which I'll say this as somebody who used to input things into MOTS or with my terrible handwriting, write on those CPMS carbon copy forms. They aren't always accurate. Like my job was a counselor, my job wasn't data, and so that has problems, which means we might have to start to work with our provider base to make sure that data is more and more accurate. But that also means seeing the data is inaccurate or accurate. And so by providing those reports to counties and just saying like, hey, here's what our outcomes look like, or here's what your current like service area looks like hopefully we can start to fix that. But we'll start to figure that should be ready, and that means burns will be reporting in there. There's going to be a lot of stuff. At this point in time, too, this is where we can review the metrics. This is really so we can start to get an eye on if there's a measure that could support discharge or transitions, like how might we leverage that, or how might we be looking at that? At the same time that this is happening, OHA is in the process of changing some rules related to the COA to allow, with the hopes of allowing peers to bill in hospital settings is the priority area there. So one of the things that we've kind of been talking about with one of those teams is could you, for example, see that if a program instituted some sort of peer-based program, like let's say a hospital did, would their IET measures go up? Like there's a question to have. And if that isn't the case, like what was it that went wrong? At the same time that this is all happening, Senate Bill 822, I think of last year, directs DCBS, which is one of our agency partners, to begin collecting quite a bit of information from commercial insurance providers, which will allow us to have time and distance, allow us to have network adequacy. A lot of the things that we've known about our CCOs, we should start be able to know about our commercial payers, and so they'll come and report that information to us as well as have a report. So that's the year, which means collecting a bunch of stuff, but you designing a bunch of stuff. My curiosity is thoughts, feelings, questions, all of that. We have about 10 minutes until public comment.
I'll go ahead and real quick. My only thought really was when it comes to like the wait lists, right? To really, when we tackle that, to um, there might have to be some outside of the box thinking, especially with CCOs hunkering down on their network adequacy, and not, bringing folks in, unless it's a specialty service, right? Which might make the wait list go up or potentially. So I just wanted to throw that out there that we might have to get our thinking caps on and really think outside of the box with that one.
I think that's a fair point. There was a somebody told me that everybody right now is doing a lot more with less, and to know that that's like the feeling coming into a lot of these conversations right now.
I'm sorry if I missed this, but I was just curious. I remember from one of the meetings we were talking about like COA applications and the rule sets for that, and then how some of those are duplicated with the CCOs and Medicaid. Would that be under the inventory or the audits? And then, because I know of people that want to open treatment centers, but you can't get to billing and reimbursement for a year, with the way the current process is now. And we
Yeah, so
need more
that
treatment providers.
no, good call out there. Are I think that that is so two pieces of that, which is one, the COA piece that I just mentioned is unrelated to that. The required audits inventory is very much related to that. That was where I think originally those conversations had stemmed from this concern around administrative burden and those startup challenges. And the kind of two spin out potential ideas that I'll throw out, and this is not something unique to the treatment committee. I know recovery committee has been talking a lot about this as well. Is like, is there some way that throughout all of this process we end up with like a like guide of like, so you're starting a program in Oregon? Like what does that mean? So I'll throw that out there. And then yes, so if we start to inventory that, that means we'll know like both like what it takes for licensure, but also like for sustainability and stability moving ahead.
I have one more question. Sorry. When we talk about medications for substance use disorder, I know that there was a lot of work done around MOUD specifically with Suboxone and all of that. I was just curious if we'll be talking about long-lasting injectables because there's a lot of inconsistencies with the CCOs and how it's being done. Some are still on buy and bill, and that's not sustainable for a lot of our programs, especially over here in Eastern Oregon. So I was just curious if we were going to touch on that, or yes? Okay, cool.
Yeah, so that should still fall under the MSUD access part of that goal. I think the thing that how I'm trying to think of like where this is in my spreadsheet. I just don't have it open right now, and I'd have to log into Smartsheet. The yes, and I'll come back to you with that. And because I like to ask the dangerous question, is anybody disappointed? I think that's an important thing to know. And it's okay. Well, then I'm perfect, and I'm gonna tell everybody that. Um, one of the things that I think is something that I also just want to throw out into this space is there is going to reach a point in time, and I don't know what that point in time is, where one of us or a few of us might feel frustration. And one of the things that I have been genuinely saying to our agency partners, and I want to make sure that we can retain here, is that they are our partners in all of this. And I know, like, I started out this meeting today by saying, like, some of us might have come in with frustration and been like, now's that chance to do it. Now's our chance to fix those, but not to act on the frustration. And I don't think anybody in this room would do that, but I want to say that in front of our agency partners to know that this is a space where like that we are partnering with them to affect change for the betterment of Oregonians. And I think that part of that is that's part of why I've kind of like made this timeline as loose as it is so that if like, for example, we get into the middle of, I don't know, MSUD access and figure out all those barriers. We go to make our recommendation and then we hear Medicaid had a cut or something. Like, I think that leaves us this ability to then say, okay, Medicaid as a partner, like, is this the time still? Is this a scary thing to do with that? Yeah, also that too. Also that too, Christy. And so uh yeah. The other thing that I would love, so the other thing too that I wanted to make sure to touch base on is that some of this work, I don't want to like, I, as much as I like the ability to jump around from project to project, this isn't mine to own. This isn't any one person. So one of the things, if you wanted to brainstorm some ideas between now and our February meeting, is ways that we might kind of asynchronously add to some information sets because for example, some of you may have already been really thinking about where you wanted to see the future of licensure or certification and like ongoing sustainability and audits look like for the state. And you might have already collected these laundry lists of all of this stuff too. So let's talk about ways that we might be able to kind of idea and information share in a way that is supportive of each of these kind of like inventories as well. Yeah. Any other thoughts, questions, ideas? Sweet. Okay. So the other thing I just want to kind of remind folks is like we had all these visuals throughout the year, and the thing that I think is kind of nice about this is we've talked about this as being this very circular process. This is where we get to see it happen now. Now we're kind of in this fun part of like doing all of this all at once, and at any single point in time, we can do any of these things too. Like we can invite the community to come in and tell us how this is going. We can start to um, we can start to do all of this. And I just want to remind everybody like what this is for though. The goal is to reduce the prevalence of substance use disorders. For treatment, I keep adding this or severity. I keep adding, we're not going to prevent substance use, but we can do the severity necessarily. Reduce substance related deaths and reduce substance related disparities and inequities. So the thing that I keep thinking is like, can we make all of the really good things about our treatment system just be good elsewhere? And that's like all I keep kind of like, that's what grounds me every morning when I get up. So with all that said, that's all I think I have for you.
Thanks, Mitch. We're winding down towards the end of the meeting. Any final comments before we open it up to public comment? Great. Any public comment? Take that silence as a no. It was great seeing everyone. Thanks for participating today and look forward to seeing you next month. Thanks all.